Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I am a professor at College of the Canyons, and I'm here to just share my journey with you. And please feel free to put a bunch of questions in the chat and um, ask us questions when we get to the end here. So here's what I have on the agenda today. I'll give you a brief introduction of what it is that we do, how it all started, an overview of the projects that we participate in, the funding progression, which I know some people might be particularly interested in learning about, where we do the work, how we do the work, amazing student success, which is also where you'll hear from my three students. And then we'll have some time for Q&A. So we are a competitive academic team. We literally compete with university teams from around the world. Very often, those university teams, this is their senior engineering project at a research university, and we're a community college. In fact, we do this outside of the classroom. We are the Astronomy and Physics Club, and within that club, we have our teams that participate with NASA. And somehow, some way, we have been selected for 10 consecutive years to participate in these projects. The two main projects that we focus on are there's a balloon that goes to the upper stratosphere. I'll talk about that in a moment. And then the other project, we launch our experiment on a rocket. And we get to be about a football field away from that rocket when it goes up. So how it all started, the man in the sunglasses with the JPL t-shirt is Dan Tikhomorov. He came to me at the Astronomy and Physics Club and said, hey, there's this university thing that is really cool. You get to launch an experiment on a balloon. I think we can do it. Would you help us write a proposal and sign the proposal? And I said, sure. Oh my goodness, I had no idea what I was starting. But we were selected, and I took a small team of students to NASA's Columbia Scientific Balloon Facility in Palestine, Texas, in 2016. So Daniel, came to me and asked, "Is this possible?" And yes, it is possible. It is possible for a community college to participate at this level. NASA HASP is a high altitude student platform. The balloon is probably about 12 stories tall. You can see the semi-truck there for scale with all the helium. It goes to the upper stratosphere, which is the edge of space. There's virtually no atmosphere really left at that point. And we have competed and been selected for 10 consecutive years. Now, you might notice that some of the years have a smaller font and some of the years have a larger font. That's because we initially started out with small payloads, and then we started getting selected for large payloads. These are the missions that we've flown. We started off attempting to capture cosmic dust in the upper stratosphere, and we did count dust particles. We were not able to analyze actual samples because they ended up being contaminated. We also, for 2 years, we sent up missions to neutralize harmful acids in the upper stratosphere, and we proved that that is possible. We can get rid of some of the harmful acids that humans have put up there. Then for 2 years, we sent up a scintillator to measure the frequency of antimatter collisions. Every time the gamma rays hit our scintillator, it sent blue photons into a photo multiplier tube. And the second year of this, 2022, is when we had our first large payload. And I thought, wow, we have all this surface area. Let's send some student art to space. So we got the art department involved and we had a STEAM project that year. Then our local amateur astronomers started coming to help out with the team. A lot of them are current or retired engineers, and they have helped us with an experiment to locate the sun. The gondola moves as it's afloat and it rotates. And so we devised a system that could, on that moving gondola, find the sun, lock onto it, and take images that are as good, they are equally detailed as the images you see from NASA for space weather. We had the same detail of those sunspots, which is pretty cool for a low cost payload up on the stratosphere. This year, my students are sending up 10 Geiger counters encased in different materials. It's a test of concept to determine if in a low atmosphere environment, near space environment, what kinds of materials will protect our astronauts if they develop a habitat on the moon or Mars where there's not a lot of atmosphere, for example. And I have a JPL partner who we have space on our payload. So he's testing a JPL photonics device. Can't tell you anything about it. He's just joining us and putting that on our payload. So this is what the students have designed, built, coded, and flown. Just some examples. I can't fit them all, but you can see our dust collectors. Then you can see in the middle our neutralizing acids experiments where we had, pockets for neutralization liquids. And then you can see our scintillator particle detectors and the one that has all the student art on there. Well, after doing HASP for a couple of years, students came to me and said, hey, there's this other experiment that goes on a rocket. Can we do that? And I said, sure, maybe. It's kind of expensive, but we found a way. And we've competed and been selected for 7 consecutive years for this one. It's a 2-stage sounding rocket that reaches 150 to 170 kilometers at apogee. At about 300 seconds, I think, is where the skin comes off. They use pyros, and then our experiment is exposed to space. On this rocket that you can see, the silver section is where the payloads are, and there are 5 full payloads or 10 half payloads that fit in that area. And the 2025, we actually competed for a large payload spot, and there were maybe a couple of university teams that were not so pleased that our community college got the full payload spot. Our missions on the rocket, the first 3 years we were designing a payload that the capsule would come out and it would slow itself down with its wing design, kind of like those propeller seeds that come off of the trees. That was the idea, the inspiration, so that you could send a payload to the surface of a moon or a planet with supplies and not have to leave behind a parachute or carry extra fuel. That was our test of concept. Then we decided, well, we can launch one. Let's try to launch 3 capsules at the same time. So we did that. And then we moved into LiDAR scanning systems and machine learning to, can we, during flight, determine if damage has occurred during launch so that we know we need to fix something before our spacecraft comes back into atmosphere, or so we know that the antenna is broken, which is a big problem in space, and that we need to fix that antenna so that our satellite will work. Also this year, we are doing a temperature profile for the entire flight on the inside and outside of the rocket. What are all of the different temperatures as the rocket goes up and comes down? So here's an example of some of the rocket experiments that were student ideas, student designed, student built, student programmed, tested. They did everything. You can see that we have 3 that have a single capsule, 1 that has 3 capsules. In 2025, there's our double decker. The bottom layer has an arm that comes out with our scanner to scan the outside of the rocket. And then up top is our capsule that we deployed. And then, of course, 2026 is under construction a little bit still. It's primarily finished, but I didn't have a finished photo that I could easily grab. But I wanted to show you the flight computer. The students design these PCBs. They solder all the parts together and they assemble all of this, test it. They do everything. Because my background is physics and astronomy, not engineering. So I have to tell the students up front, I can't help you with the engineering, but I will volunteer time to make this opportunity available to you. In 2022, we were invited to participate in the entry-level rocket mission, where 2 to 3 students go to NASA Wallops for a week. There are modules and a bazillion little bags with parts, and the modules take the students through the process of assembling and testing and coding a small payload. And I've met, so this first year that I was there, I met professors that they were an English professor, they were a math professor. They just thought this would be really cool for students. And so they came and learned with the students. This is literally entry level. And you don't have to do anything up front. There's no design, anything that you have to do up front. You just go for the 1 week. Okay, so how do you fund this? Oh my gosh, this has kept me up at nights, I will tell you. There literally was 1 year that I did not have the funding to take us to NASA site for testing until a week before we were supposed to be there. Finally, money came in that I was like, oh, we can go. The very first year, our amazing Chancellor Diane Van Hook, a proponent of innovation at our college for many, many years, she really liked the idea of us participating with NASA, of providing this opportunity to students, and she gave us $5,000 for our first year for HASP. That had to cover our materials, and it had to cover our team's travel to NASA site. So we did everything for HASP with $5,000. That's all we had. The second and third year, I applied for one of our college's mini grants. We received an award from our LA County Supervisor, Catherine Barger. We started to get some community donations because I did every possible outreach event there was and said, oh, please fund my students. And then we needed a little bit extra, so our chancellor provided us with a little bit of innovation funds. And again, this was just to cover materials and team travel. HASP doesn't have a fee. You get to launch there for free. Then we move into the middle years where I started pulling together more bits and pieces. I started getting little $1,000 grant from Aerojet Rocketdyne, a small Lockheed grant. California Space Grant started to help us out a little bit with like $500. We went to Honda, helpful Honda people, and they gave us $1,000. So you can see I'm piecemealing the money together. And managing all of this is a lot. But RockSat has a fee. To launch on that rocket is expensive. Rock On costs money for that 1 week intensive. Plus, you have all the materials. I want to take as many students as I can to NASA site. So more money coming in, but more things going on. Well, in 2024, after 6 years of demonstrated success of tracking internships and scholarships that my students had secured, full-time positions that were starting to happen from some of my former students, the college said, oh, maybe we should give this program a little money. So we now have a program review similar to what I do for my physical science courses and my astronomy courses, where every year I submit to the college what we need for the program. So they give us a little bit of additional funds added to all those other pieces you saw before. I'm still doing all that. I'm still pulling in small grants from all over the place. We still have our amazing community providing us with donations, which, by the way, I have my students all sign thank you letters and we send them out to the donors. Then in 2025, oh my goodness, windfall. I had been talking to folks at NASA sites for a while about the gap in funding, that there's funding out there for the research universities, and there's funding for very specific projects at the high school level. But there is not funding, well, there wasn't, for community colleges and teaching universities. And I ended up having someone invite me to write an unsolicited NASA grant, which was funded at $50,000 a year for 3 years. And I contracted for 1 semester with NASA headquarters bridge program to help design a grant program for community colleges and teaching institutions, non-R1 institutions. And then I applied for one of those grants and I got it. So now the Mosaics grant provides us with materials funding, travel money. The unsolicited NASA grant provides us with materials and NASA site travel. The Mosaics funding also provides my co-advisor and I with a little bit of a stipend for some of the hours we volunteer. And I had just applied for a new grant because my Mosaics grant is ending. And so I'm trying to follow on with a Compass grant to keep us going, as well as all the little parts and pieces that you saw in the previous slide. So where do we do the work? Well, wherever we are allowed to be. We work outside of the normal structure of a community college. There is no formula for doing this kind of work at a community college. The funding formula doesn't allow for it. Room use has to be designated for credit classes or non-credit classes, whatever is bringing compensation into the college. So we get whatever's left over. For a while, our college had a makerspace and we worked in the makerspace, which was amazing because then everybody could see what we were doing, but our makerspace closed. For a long time, we were allowed to work in our college's machine shop. They have a manufacturing program, and we were allowed to work in there whenever there were not classes in progress. But as we grew in scope and people, they decided this was too risky, and they really didn't want us in there. Labs we have been allowed to use has changed. We get bounced. So we currently work in a storage area. My Mosaics grant had a component to it that the college would provide us with a dedicated space so that we could leave everything out and not have to constantly pack it up at the end of our workday, which things break. When you unpack it and pack it and unpack it and pack it, wires break, connections break. So we were supposed to be given a designated workspace where we could leave everything set up. They gave us a storage area behind a lecture hall, which we are making work, but we have to pull everything out for the most part and work in a lab somewhere. But we do have our own little machine shop now. We have a tabletop 3-axis milling machine. We have a tabletop CNC machine. We have a large 3D printer, and we do all of that in our little storage area. Students often end up taking things home because we only have access for certain hours on certain days, and there's a lot of work to accomplish. They work in their garages. They've worked in my garage. They work on kitchen tables. We do the work wherever we can find a place to do the work. Why do we do this? Why do I continue to volunteer my time and, almost work a second job? Why does Greg continue to volunteer so many hours? Well, my students who participate in this, they all complete their STEM pathway for the most part. I have 2 rules that my students must follow that I repeat very often during meetings. Number 1, your first priority must always be you. Your success starts with you taking care of you. Second priority always must be academics, because without that piece of paper, you can't move forward and do what you want to do. Everything else, there's family, there's work, there's these projects, you have to decide how to prioritize. But students know that they have to be enrolled, and I check on their academic progress, that I want them to do well, and that has to come before these projects. So they stay in their classes even when calculus gets hard or physics is unbearable. They stay, and they end up transferring to amazing places, and they write about these projects in their essays, and that's how they get into these places. I just hit number 200. The students that remember to get back to me and say, oh, hey, Teresa, I just got a scholarship because of working on these projects. I just hit number 200 for scholarships and internships. You see some of the places of internships: NASA, JPL, Tesla. There's so many more. Scholarships have even included a full ride at university for a couple of students because of having participated in these projects. I've had 14 students tell me about their full-time positions that they use these projects during their interview process to describe what they can do. And I didn't always keep good records because I didn't expect this to continue for 10 years. But I went back and I looked at rosters, and I know that I have had at least 1,000 students over these last 10 years that have participated at some level. My goal always with this community is I'm working to change the future faces of STEM. So that's our motto. And what do I mean by that? Please, no one on the call take offense. But when you go to a conference, a physics conference in particular, or maybe an engineering conference, I want people to be able to look around the room and see themselves, people like themselves in the room. Because if you look at pictures of conferences for physics, astrophysics, it's almost all white males. I'm really working to change the future faces of STEM to look like all my students. Well, I could go on and on forever, but my whole reason for doing this is all of the student stories that I have um, had the joy of hearing for these many years. And I'm thankful that I have three students here to share their story. And I want to give them time. And I want to give time for all these questions I see popping up in the chat and maybe other questions that are coming to mind. So take it away, Cameron.
All right. Hello, my name is Cameron. So I joined this club in late 2022 as a high school student. Never had been in the club before. Um, I'll just say that having this be my first club was like I don't even know how to put it, probably life changing. Um, and as you'll see, I do a lot of software stuff, but actually I'm an aerospace engineering major. So the fact that that happened, I don't really know how it all worked, but it just sort of did. But I fell into this place for 2023 where the Rocksat project manager had basically just welcomed me onto the team and said, "Hey, there's this cool idea for a dashboard. Let's go ahead and do it." The one you see in the top right, that's actually the 2024 one, but the 2023 one, it's a whole story. That one wasn't very great, but it inspired me to step forward and try and make something that looked really nice for 2024. And then 2025, I did a little bit as well. Um, but yeah, being part of this club has actually been like my pathway for learning a bunch of things. So I've learned multiple different languages. I mainly specialized in web design, web development, is which is what that dashboard is. It is a web application. And since then, I've been the club president. I've been the software lead. Again, even though I do aerospace engineering, I just fell into this place where I just meshed really well with the software that we put on the rocket, whether that be something like web development or something like programming microcontrollers, um, or other little aspects like the time of flight sensor that we would use on the LiDAR arm last year. Just random stuff, sometimes niche, sometimes not. Um, and so I'll be transferring out after being part of this club for what, almost about 4 years now, just a little bit under, and hoping to come back every now and then because I'll only be a few hours away at San Luis Obispo. But yeah, I just love sharing about this, and being part of this club has been like genuinely life-changing. Helped boost my kind of social ability. Before this, I was as very quiet person, didn't really talk about much, didn't really share much about my experiences, but of course, even just being here and talking about them is something I wouldn't have done before joining this club. And then also taught me a lot about myself and a lot about my passions. Again, I used to hate software before going into this club. Now I love it. So a lot of big differences. So I'm just grateful to be here.
Cameron, what's the picture on the bottom? Tell them about that.
Oh yeah, so the picture on the bottom, that was from Rock On. So that was in 2024. That was a blast. I loved doing Rock On. I learned a lot. So because up to that point I'd really only done software, I didn't know what soldering was. I thought it was this big like spooky thing. But after doing soldering for I don't even know that there's so much soldering with that. It's actually really fun and it becomes really simple. It just takes a little bit of adjustment. But yeah, that was from Rock On. That was I believe that's going to be the morning of the launch after. So that was a super exciting time. My first ever rocket launch. Um, Completely unforgettable, by the way. Teresa says it all the time, but truly, like, a rocket launch never gets old. It's just something I don't know, you just can't forget it. Um, yeah, that was probably, one of the top moments of my time here at COC, if not the best moment, honestly.
Yeah, see that smile?
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon Kelpis, and gosh, where do I start with this club? Well, prior to re-enrolling in school, I'm 26 years old, so I'm a non-traditional student. I was working as a commercial fisherman. And then during my second year, we had fished for literally 31 hours straight. And I was like, you know what? I don't know if this is it. I got, I've always wanted to go back to school. And so I made that decision. And whenever I do things, I really like to completely zone in and just lock in on it and just do my absolute best. So I was eager to join clubs that were related to physics as soon as I re-enrolled back in school. And so I found this club online on College of the Canyon's website, which is the Astronomy and Physics Club. And I saw in the little description that they were doing NASA projects. I was like, yeah, okay, sure. We're a community college. I'm sure like maybe it's like NASA adjacent or something like that, but I didn't take it too seriously. But when I showed up to my first meeting, I was like, oh my gosh, they are actually working on NASA projects. This is a phenomenal opportunity. So with my nature, I just dove completely straight in. So that was probably around February or March of 2024. So I kind of joined a little bit late in the project, but I was able to still do and mechanically designed a few parts for HASP. And so, with that experience, I was like, this is really cool because I designed something and then I literally watched it take off on this gigantic balloon. And that was one of our most successful missions as well. I think we received over 600 images of the sun and the solar flares on it. It was quite fascinating. So, next year, I wanted to take it up a notch. So, during that next year, I applied to electrical sub lead. And man, that was a lot of work, but I learned so much. I learned how to create PCBs, how to make schematics, and lots and lots and lots of soldering. And so, with that experience, of course, as Teresa has been pointing out, that applying to internships, I definitely wrote about this club. And I believe it is because of those experiences, I was able to receive a internship at the Carnegie Institute of Science, a very prestigious institution for astrophysics. And I was able to research dark matter. And so the culmination of all these skills, getting these internships and working with these rockets and weather balloons is just, it keeps building on top of each other and building on top of each other. So my area where I want to do in my after my academic career is doing some sort of physics research. So I was really eager to apply for the research position for RockSatX in 2026. And then I also got elected as club president just because I don't know, I feel like I have a knack for outreach and talking to people. So that position allowed me a chance to work on those skills. So with these new experiences, I was able to receive another internship at Caltech's IPAC. And like I said, the culmination of these skills, they just keep building and building on top of each other. So I'm doing really well at my internship at Caltech. My mentors are very happy with me. And I know it's all because of this club. It really started as soon as I entered that first meeting in February or March of 2024. So, kind of building off Cameron, like this club was very, very life-changing. And yeah, it's just something I'm eternally grateful for. And as Teresa pointed out, we are the only community college that does this. And so, it's not just my life that has been blessed by this club, but many, many, many others. And, I've seen it happen so many times, and it makes me so happy to be there. And also because of this club, I am able to transfer to one of my dream schools, which is UC Berkeley. So, yeah, I'd say I'm really at where I am today, mainly because of this club, and I'm really happy to be here and share my experience.
And Brandon skipped out on seeing the rocket launch because he has this new cool internship. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's another thing. I'm not able to go to these rocket launches just because I keep getting internships, and I'm so grateful. It's like it's one of those like situations where like you have steak and lobster. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
Good morning. My name is Vanessa Rivas, and I too came in College of the Canyons as a non-traditional student. I am currently 26, same as Brandon. I actually came from an aerospace and defense company prior. I was part-time at College of the Canyons and full-time work, and I I was immersed with all these amazing engineers. And I think once I had clocked in about 82 hours a week, and I was unable to do part time. So that's when I kind of stepped back and said I need to quit and I need to do full-time school. And that was my beginning in summer of 2025. This was also my first club, and I was always drawn, of course, to aerospace and NASA, and all these other amazing companies. And to also work alongside engineers, they're like, you need to do this full time. You need to get this done at ASAP. So when I had joined the club, I didn't know exactly what I was getting myself into. I similar to Brandon, I just complete immersion, and I think that was one of the most difficult things to manage time because we have so much school and so much more responsibilities as leads. But amazing to just learn people on my part. So I am actually Cameron's sub lead for project manager on Rocksat, and him and I trying to manage a whole team of the size through mechanical software research. I'm missing my electrical team. It was quite the endeavor. Again, we built quite the communication heavily through Discord, quite to build communication skills and weekly meetings, as well as communicating what needs to be done. And I think for the most part was understanding people on a strange level. I think they have to entrust you with a lot of their personal life and how to manage school, how to manage this project. And I think it was just trying to make it as seamless as possible. I am currently going now. I had switched with this opportunity through this club. I had met Capital Tech's team. They are also on the rocket with us, and I had connected with them. And I will be transferring to that private university, for my astronautical engineering and professional pilot. So that was an addition of a surprise. I think I keep getting a little too many surprises this year, and I didn't expect this one. And it just everything works so seamless. So I think Teresa's always mentioned once or twice, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I love the building of the community. Everyone's amazing. When you talk to all the other students on this project from other universities building on their payloads, it's a whole other world of opportunities. And it was it's still an amazing experience. I undermined how much time we needed for this. So I do want to emphasize we put in quite a bit of hours. I think I'm a bit more used to it because my 80-hour before working, you have to prepare with the boatload of responsibilities. And this club has given me such an amazing experience, very different volunteered experience, but it's same as Teresa. I think quite a bit of the volunteer hours. I think in the end, it's so worth it. And that's all I have to really say. Thank you.
You and Matthew were the first to do what at rocket testing last week?
Oh, that was like a happy accident. So we were adding the thermocouple wires around the rocket when it was on its belly the day prior, and we were running out of time because we underestimated the time, or something had gone wrong. The next day they were like, well, at least now you can go onto the lift and finish the job. And we were ecstatic because I think there is one school in the nose cone, so they did go on the lift, and we've been no one in College of the Canyons history in Rocksat team had gone on the lift up and personal, moving, rotating 360 the rocket. It was I was like, my only thing was like, don't drop this bolt, please don't drop this screw, because it's pretty high up. It doesn't show in this photo, but in the beginning you see how high we were up. It was an amazing experience there.
Okay, sorry, a little technical difficulty there for a moment. Okay, some concluding thoughts. It's not easy. It is not easy for me. It is not easy for my co-advisor, Greg, who's there in the orange shirt, being all like excited that students came with him to purchase metal. It is not easy for the students, especially the students who agreed to take on the lead positions. Uh, each step forward brings new barriers. I finally, always in the early years, it was finding the money. So the students could do this, like constantly looking for money for students to do this. And then once I got the money taken care of, then all of a sudden we had no place to work. Makerspace closed. The machine shop became closed to us. And so, every step forward brings new barriers. As you grow, as things grow, you end up on the radar, and then there needs to be policies and rules, and risk management gets involved. And I receive sometimes, like, if not weekly emails, daily emails, monthly emails about you can't do this anymore. So it's a constant battle to do this at a community college because they're just not built for it. And they're concerned about the safety. They're concerned about use of resources. So it's tough. It is a whole nother full-time job in addition to all my teaching, and I usually teach about 160% load. So why do I do it? Well, look at the smiles on the students' faces. If you saw that in person and you felt their energy in person, I can't quit. How can I possibly say no? When I look at these people and they're so excited about their idea and they're holding their payload that's gone to space, and I can't say no to that. And I get another text message about, yeah, that Blue Origin failure. My valves were not the anomaly. My valves that I designed worked. And that was the person who got this all started. Still texting me after all these years. So students want to participate in something real. They can't believe they get to be a part of this. But what you need is you must have a faculty champion who's willing to volunteer 1,000 hours a year. I'm not kidding. You must have an administrative champion because the administrators are the ones who make the rules. I lost my administrative champion when we lost Chancellor Diane Van Hook about 3 years ago, and it has become a lot more difficult to make this happen at the college. You need any supporters you can get. Now, most of the other faculty that I have approached to say, hey, can you come help us with this engineering thing or this computer science thing? Because I don't know how to do that. They're like, well, how much do you get paid? I'm like, you don't. You get paid in smiles, and they won't come. But our MESA director, Amy Foote, has been amazing at setting up. She has set up skills labs to try to give students skills so they can come onto these projects and know how to do something. She tells students about this opportunity. Mr. Greg Petit, who's here, and I'm sure he'll take questions at the end if you have questions for him. He worked for NASA for 20 years as a machinist, and he teaches us how to make all of our parts, how to metal. He volunteers his time for this. And a few years ago, our local amateur astronomer group, a few of them started hanging out with us and providing some of the engineering mentoring that I can't provide and volunteering their time. So anyone you can get, oh my gosh, welcome them, because many hands make light work, and it is a lot of hours. Vanessa was not exaggerating about the hours that students put in. And we faculty and volunteers, we put in a lot of hours too. So here's another shot at why we do this. I started with about 5 students. This year I've had 50 to 60 students showing up every Saturday to work on stuff in a lab. They're teaching each other. They're learning on their own because I don't know how to do the engineering that they're doing. But oh, wow, check out those smiles when they're standing next to the rocket with their experiment on the rocket. It is transformational. And that's why I just keep pushing forward and doing what I can to make this happen for all these amazing, super intelligent people. Thank you for listening. So I have my 3 students here. I have my co-advisor, Greg, here. You guys are welcome to ask us anything.
So I'll start by asking the questions that are in the chat. So Urska had asked, so first of all, they said that this is very impressive, but how much turnaround do you have with your teams since community college students usually take 2 years to complete their program?
Okay, and that's part of what makes it difficult. The university teams, they have the students, come in to the team as freshmen and sophomores, and they're learning from the seniors who are in charge of the project. The seniors are teaching them all the skills, teaching them how to do this. And most of the university teams, it's an engineering faculty who's in charge, not astronomy. So the turnaround for us is very high. Sometimes I'll have people start in the fall semester and then they leave by the spring semester because it's too much. It's too much work. They have to focus on their classes. All of the knowledge that's gained in a year. So, most of my people who end up in lead positions, they transfer out. And then the next year, maybe I have a few people who participated the previous year, but I largely have all new people again. So I would say the turnaround is I maybe get to keep about, 10 to at most 25% of the team that have any knowledge of these projects. And it might be very minimal participation. Maybe they just kind of came and hung out. They didn't really do a lot. And then, 90 to 75% of the people each year are new. And so we start the learning process over again each year. We largely turn over almost entirely every year. I'm lucky if I get to keep some people for like 2 years. Then I'm just, so excited because they know what to do.
So the second question in the chat, also from Urska, is could you give more information on NASA funding opportunities for high schools? And maybe you can talk a bit more about Mosaic for community colleges as well.
All right, so I don't know about funding for high schools. What I did is I signed up to be on the Inspires, so I'll type it in on the Inspires listserv. And what I kept seeing were so many grant opportunities, but they were for 4-year research institutions, for graduate students, and so forth. And then after, I talked to enough people, then I worked for that one semester with NASA headquarters to develop, with the Bridge program, to develop the Mosaics grant. Now, the Mosaics grant doesn't exist anymore. As you probably know, many funding sources have disappeared for student opportunities, for science in general. So the Mosaics grant doesn't exist anymore. It was a 2-year grant. You had to have a NASA site partner. It includes, releases me from one class, pays the equivalent of one class to Greg to do the machining with us, pays for us an adult hourly to help us order our parts and keep track of the expenditures from my grants and all my funding sources. And then provided, this was the best part, for my 5 leads for HASP, and my 5 leads for RockSat. So mechanical engineering lead, electrical engineering lead, software lead, science lead, project manager. They each got $1,500 stipend as a lead. So it becomes a paid internship. So as I said, though, Mosaics doesn't exist anymore. However, let me put this in. I've applied for what is very similar to the Mosaics grant, and that's the Compass grant. Oh, I typed the wrong, it's SMD. SMD, Compass grant. You could probably find this anywhere. I think the Mosaics grant were offered quarterly. I don't know if the Compass grants are being offered quarterly or biannual or annually. But they provide money to community colleges and teaching institutions. You cannot be a research institution for this grant. So hopefully that helps.
Are there any other?
I'm gonna go back to one other thing. Share screen. Sorry. Something happened here, so let me go back to a screen. I want to give you a little bit more information because I know the money's important. Okay, so I was at an outreach event at one point where I met our LA County supervisor, told her about this program. She provided us with a $1,000 award for the community service that I'm doing for these students. Then we took our payload. After a couple of years, we took our payload to show her what her funding was helping to make happen. And she was so impressed that a group of students would go to her office to show her their experiment that now we receive a $4,000 award each year from our LA County Supervisor, Catherine Barger. So doing outreach events means that you can ask, for support. Then, I started looking at small aerospace industries around us and, did they have any kind of grant program for community involvement in space exploration? And then I started getting small grants applying for and receiving. So I have to apply every year for Jet Rocketdyne. One year, I was part of a Lockheed grant. California Space Grant, I have to apply every year. One year, we went and talked to all of the folks on this one street that have dealerships. And we started at Honda because of the helpful Honda folks. And Honda gave us, I think it was $1,500, $1,000 to $1,500. So it's going out and talking to people, a lot of it, doing outreach events and saying, hey, can you support my people, my students, so they can keep doing this? And that's a lot of how I brought in funds, including just donations from our community. What's our next question?
So I have another question. What you've said that it's been hard to get sometimes faculty to help out because it's all volunteer. But you've also said multiple times that you're not a coder and you're not an engineer. So how do students learn those skills?
So, so my students, they come in with skills that are amazing to me. Like I've often joked with Cameron that I can hear him talking, but he's speaking some foreign language that I have no clue what he just said because he is at a level of software that it makes no sense to me. These students already know how to do some things, but then they are all willing to learn on their own. Maybe Cameron or Vanessa or Brandon can shed some light onto this. I know they teach themselves how to design the PCB. They teach themselves about the science. They teach themselves how to do the CAD models. We have some guidance from, Greg helps with going from that CAD model to mechanical drawings to machining. Our local group, we have some help there with the electrical systems, but largely the students teach themselves and they teach each other. So Cameron, Vanessa, Brandon, do any of you want to speak to this?
I wanted to go first on this because I recall very vividly. It was my turn to build the electrical box, and I had very maybe like understanding of one or two steps in SolidWorks, and that was not enough. And I remember the first day of SolidWorks in the spring semester, I got a little bit more than two steps of understanding just in a 2 hour classroom, and then I just ran with that for the next 2 3 days. Because once you understand a good basic 10 steps, you fall into, okay, how do I do this? Google, SolidWorks guide, and continuing from there. But because of our um, dedicated time to this project, which is our passion, I feel like this was my baby, my electrical box. So it was trial and error over and over again. And I think that's where you're learning even more. Um, I think I had crammed in all of my SolidWorks and understanding in a few days, and that was partially my obsession. I would say maybe a week. It did take a lot of trial and errors. So I think similar to all of us, when we have that that passion for our skill, whether it's learning a language or me with CAD, um, it comes easier to learn. And it's not like, oh, I'm just gonna sit in the classroom, let me try to learn. No, it's like boom, boom, boom to the next thing. But yeah, that was a little bit on SolidWorks there.
And that's her electrical box down in the corner there, with all the flight computers in it. So that's what Vanessa designed.
It's like weird to see it half. There's another half to it, but yes, that's mine.
And I'd just like to add on to that as far as so I don't major in software, but I've just I don't want to say thrown into it because I feel like that has a negative connotation. But I just honestly just jumped into it. So for me, um, it, I always had a passion for graphic design, and that's just something I kind of ended up learning on my own. I was just introduced to Photoshop by my father. And then just I'm like, oh, it'd be cool to like, I don't know. I just like shapes, I like numbers, stuff like that. So I just got thrown into that and I don't know, worked on that for, years and years. I've been doing graphic design, just little side things here and then here now. Um and then I'm just like, oh, okay. Well, there's this dashboard idea. It'd be cool to make it pretty because again, I don't have it here, but I mean, it was a very lackluster. I'll say that. The software was kind of cool and I learned a lot from it, but I wanted to make it really nice. So this right here in the top right again is kind of the finished product for 2024, and it is technically a live website too. So it does actually look like that. Of course, did some graphic design work, so it looks, with the little thing in the middle and everything like that is a little bit different. But a lot of the software that I learned was just like, okay, how can I do this? Sometimes that came to watching YouTube tutorials, sometimes as like, I mean, hours and hours of just reading documentation, but it really just came from being like, okay, I want to build this thing. And obviously, when you want to build something, it's not just like, boom, you could just do it in an hour. But there's a lot of steps that come with that. And trying to figure out what those steps actually are was probably the largest kind of learning curve because a lot of times it's not even just about the finished product. Like coming up with the finished product is, a fairly simple thing compared to being like, okay, I need to do this first, then I need to do this. I need to learn how to do this. Okay, let me spend 10 hours doing that. But a lot of it is just being like, okay, I want to do this thing. How do I do it? And then Google becomes your best friend and you can kind of just learn how to do things just by reading, by watching others do it, ask questions, getting really curious. Um, Super helpful. Just trying to do a little bit more than you'd originally intended. Try to push yourself, things like that. Very, I guess, broad things. So I try not to get too specific with the software stuff, but I could tell you there have been things that I've worked on. I remember the time of flight sensor that I worked on last year. I mean, I don't I couldn't tell you. I mean, maybe 100 hours. I don't even know if that would do it justice. But just trying to figure out how to get that thing to work, I had to learn way, way more than just software. It was like it became protocols, it became talking about electrical circuits. It was like a whole thing. But either way, you just kind of end up getting into this flow state, just like Vanessa had said. It starts off with a couple steps and then just like it's off to the races. You just start doing things and you don't even realize you're learning. And then you look back and you're like, oh shoot, like wow, that's crazy. So yeah, that I don't know how much that answers the question, but I hope that kind of adds on to what Vanessa already said.
And Brandon, how many slides in that design review did you have of all the science that you had figured out how to do? I don't even remember the number of slides.
It was like 30 or 35. And the way I came to that conclusion was just like kind of basically just learning from other people. Kind of as you were pointing out earlier. Like because when I first joined the club in 2024, I was working with HASP and the advisors from the local astronomy group, they primarily work in HASP. So like people like Roby have a lot of mechanical engineering, CAD design experiences, and then Dave that has a bunch of electrical experiences. So I kind of gathered tidbits from there. Then when I became an electrical sublead, Aram had been doing this for years at this point, and he's learned from others, so he taught me a lot. And then pretty much all this mathematical skills I gained from my internships, I applied it into my research role this year. So it's basically just learning from other people. So that was primarily my experience. Learning from other people and then taking what you know and building something new with it.
So as you see, I don't know how to do these things. I open the door and I make the space available. And I spend many, many hours promoting these amazing people and finding the money. But they know how to do things that I don't know how to do.
So, Teresa, for a faculty member at a, say, small community college who wants to get started, what would you say is the first step or first couple of steps?
I would say your first step is find your administrative champion. If your president has office hours, go pitch the idea to the president and see if there might be a little bit of funding from somewhere that could help you get started. If there's a foundation, um, see if the foundation will help you with some fundraising. Uh, I would definitely start with HASP and or Rock On. So Rock On is a $3,000 cost for one faculty and two students to go to Wallops for 1 week. And then your team could raise funds, do pizza fundraisers or whatever for the travel. Because we did a lot of that. We still do that. HASP doesn't have a charge. All you need is the money for the materials, which you can decide what that budget's going to be. We're sending up Geiger counters. They're not that expensive. It doesn't have to be super high tech to go up on any of these. And a lot of the expense really is how many students you want to take to travel. Because it's about, I would say, this is before the fuel prices thing. It was an average of about 2,000 to 2,400 per person per trip to go to NASA site. That's for flight, shared 2 students per hotel room, a shared vehicle we load up in a van, and then small food stipends. You're looking at about 2,000 to 2,400 per person. But I would start with find your administrative champion, because you need someone who's in a role where they can find a location for you to work or store your stuff at least. You need someone who maybe will help you with, you can go ask this person, or you're allowed to ask that person for funding support. Without your administrative champion, it really becomes just even harder to accomplish things, because you need a place to work on campus and store stuff. But I would start there and start fundraising. I ask all of my students to participate in fundraising. You saw the QR code. I asked them to share that widely on their social media. That QR code in my slides has our social media. It also has our donation link. It has my information so people can contact me. But that's where I would start. Go to every outreach thing you can. If there's something at the library, if there's something at a nature center, and you're allowed to go with a flyer with a couple of students and share your story, become known, in the science outreach community. It's a great way to start bringing in donations, and 500 here, 1,000 there, 4,000 from our LA County supervisor. Talk to your California Space Grant. You cobble together enough little bits and pieces of money, and if Grandma Ciardi donates $10 a month. She signed up for a monthly donation out of her credit card. You can get family members to be a part of this too. You can cobble together enough money to at least do HASP and maybe Rock On. RockStatX is a whole nother beast. I tell you what, that one made me start losing sleep, because of the cost of the things that you have to purchase that will survive on the rocket. The components are more expensive. The cost of the rocket fee. And all of these happy faces look at me, like I just am on the money tree. And I'm like, I'm trying. I'm really trying here. I'm out of budget for you guys to buy another set of PCBs, but I'll find it. So yeah, each state has a space grant program, but they have different goals. Sometimes they have discretionary funds that they can throw at something, and sometimes they just have their very specific program. So don't take offense if your space grant can't support you. They have their own goals at each state. So hopefully that helps. Little pieces of how to get started. Get out there and do outreach, and get bold about, please, can you support my students? They really want to do this. They really want to put their experiment to space, and you could be a part of it. You could sign the payload if you will give us $100. Whatever, just be excited, because it's really cool. And you'd be surprised at how much that excitement will bring in if you go to outreach events. Any other questions? I also have my manufacturing advisor here, Greg. He could, share a little bit of his insights. If you have more questions for the students,
I want to take a moment just to say how much I appreciate the opportunity to work with Teresa. When she first was approached by Daniel with this notion, and the fact that she didn't say, gee, I don't know anything about that. She has always been a really positive energy. I never knew her until she was faced with this dilemma. It's like, gee, I don't know anything about building something, but let's talk to the manufacturing program. I had been a NASA retiree who was just trying to keep myself busy in retirement, and I didn't want to be bored just tinkering in the garage. So working in the manufacturing program, teaching CNC machining, I worked for NASA shuffling paper at the end of my career because it pays better. But the most fun thing in the world is making stuff for me, this tactile learning experience that I had as a kid. And so when she talked to my boss, he says, "Oh, we have a guy who used to work for NASA. Maybe he can help you." And it was not so much that I felt like I'm here to save the day. It's like it's Teresa's positivity, the fact that I knew she was kind of like out of her realm, but I thought, well, I like the energy that she possesses, this can-do attitude. And that's one of the things that I learned in my career, that being a machinist and stepping into the technology transfer, intellectual property management stuff, I was instructed that you don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You just need to have a positive attitude. And you have to know who the experts are to ask, and feel free to just throw yourself at their mercy and see who's willing to support you. And that's where I was fortunate to basically, I feel like I've been riding on Teresa's coattails this whole time. For a decade, she dreamed up this opportunity to say, I think we can go to these NASA places. And it's like, well, I know how much fun NASA is in terms of all the places to work in the world. There's this whole discovery of the unknown. It's not a military-based thing. It's not a defense-related thing, although there are partnerships and collaborations with people who have those tools, because our goal is to understand the unknowable, and teaching young people what's out there and what the opportunities are with that agency. It's not like, hey, not everybody's going to follow my footsteps and work for NASA like I did, but to see who are the people that are doing fun things and amazing things, and to gain from like this amazing personality that Teresa has, that it's all about a can do, and don't be afraid to ask. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to support the continued efforts that Teresa has had with this.
I have a comment and a question. First, I would agree with Gregory. I'm very impressed with Teresa's been doing. I did something similar for only 2 years, and that was at a four-year institution, and that made my hair turn gray. So I cannot imagine doing it for 10 years. So you look fantastic for doing 10 years of such hard work. It's fantastic. My question is, so COC, I assume, has an engineering program. Is that correct? Okay. Because I would think that would be an important thing to have also, in addition to all the other prerequisites that you were mentioning, in terms of trying to start something similar to what you've done. Is because you would have to, if you don't have an engineering program, you'd have to create a student body. Like, I mean, these fantastic students that are in this meeting, they just don't pop out of nowhere. They at least were, I assume, already existed when Daniel came up to you for the first time. He wasn't like the only person on your campus. So I think anybody who's listening to this video probably already knows that the students are also have to already be there before you even think about starting it.
Yeah, so Daniel had actually started in the engineering club, and they didn't do anything. In fact, the faculty would unlock the lab and say, okay, you guys go ahead and have your meeting, and would leave. And he found out that the astronomy and physics club were going on all these tours, because I take students to JPL, SpaceX, Boeing. I arrange tours whenever I can of cool places. And so he came over to the Astronomy and Physics Club and asked about doing this. And, I'm always very upfront that I don't know how to do this, but sure. And I have asked engineering faculty at our college to come and help, but literally the response was, sure, I can probably come for an hour. How do I, where do I fill out for the pay for that? And I'm like, oh, there is no pay, but we really need you. And they're like, oh, well, there's not, there's no money associated with it. I'm not doing it. So we do have an engineering program, but people do teach a lot, and not everybody has the energy to do things outside of the teaching. And, I have to respect that. I'm probably a little bit crazy for doing, I log the hours that I work. I don't log all the times they're blowing up my phone or sending me emails, but I log between 900 and 1,000 hours a year for these students to do these projects. But we do have an engineering program, and these students come into community college already knowing a lot before they even enter the engineering program. I will say that. So if you have, even if you don't have an engineering program, perhaps if you have if you have math, if you have physics, those students might exist. You never know what the skills are. The community college students are just as brilliant and have just as many skills as the university students. They're just smart enough to be saving money on those first 2 years of classes that are the same across the board, in my opinion. So I do have a couple of supplemental documents that I can share in the chat if you're interested. I went looking in my stuff. I have a flyer that we have put out to recruit folks, particularly when I'm trying to pull from Mesa. Amy Foote, our Mesa director, is always amazing at helping me bring students in. The timeline, what it looks like from beginning to end. As soon as we're finishing up missions, the next missions are starting, but I can share that timeline with you. It's very general. It doesn't have all the detailed, like when we have to machine this part or that part or get that electronics done. A statement of skills. I had to write this for one of the many funding sources so these are all the possible skills that students can learn from working on these projects. And then my list of internships and full-time positions that students have remembered to get back to me at. So if you want any of those, I could pop those documents. There are 3 Word docs and an Excel spreadsheet. I could pop those into the chat if you're curious. Yeah? Okay. Let me work on that. Yeah. And then if anyone else wants to share maybe what was transformational about going to NASA site. So Cameron, you have seen a rocket launch. Vanessa, you've been in the sardine room and there for testing. While I'm working on getting these documents in, share what is it that's transformational about being able to go to NASA site and do what you did at NASA site, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so the most transformational part, I think, was not only having worked on the project for the whole year and being able to literally go to a NASA site and mess around with the rocket, see the tests occur, things like that. I think just the most transformation is it just it's good to see that it's fun in a way. That it's not always like, like deadlines, stress, like freaking out about things breaking, but it can just be a lot of fun when people get together and they have this common interest and they all get to see their projects going on this rocket. You just get to talk with others and hear about how they've dreamed of doing this for years, or they've worked so hard, balancing all their classes while also building an entire project. Um, Being able to see that there are other people that are super duper passionate about this and would give up anything just to see this thing work is just, it's really inspirational because it makes you realize like you're not alone in really just being passionate about this thing and just being willing to do anything to get this project to work or to learn this thing or to grow in some way or talk with others. Something that's just something that to me really stood out and just being like, oh, okay, like I'm not the only one who would like go crazy hours trying to learn this one little thing, whether it be software, whether it be physics, whether it be math, like other people who are just spending hours trying to learn these things and are so willing to share it too is really awesome.
I wanted to quickly piggyback on what Cameron mentioned. I think it's what 10 months we've been working on this. Oh my gosh, it's the roller coaster, the emotional roller coaster, the physical roller coaster of everything. It's so nice. It's a breath of fresh air when you get in contact in person with the other teams, and then you're like, oh, it's not just us. We're not the only ones that were panicking every other corner. Not panicking, but just managing the problem, work the problem, move forward, next problem. And I think it's just surreal to just because I think we're so tight knit for quite a bit, and then it's like stepping out of the room for quite a while. It kind of feels like that. It's like breathing fresh air, being on the base and just seeing the process of what we've been working so hard for all these months. It's like, wow, it's no longer on paper. We have it now in hand, and now we see this beautiful rocket. And yeah, thank you.
All right, I popped those 4 documents I talked about into the chat. So in case that's helpful to anyone. And then I do know this is recorded. Also, let me put my email in here if you think of questions later. I'm always happy to help anyone else get started with doing something amazing for students. I don't even know what that is. What is AIAA?
American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics.
Maybe someone else I need to talk to, especially if I don't get the Compass grant.
Yes.
See, this is why you do outreach. You learn every time you interact with other people. There's always something new.
Are there any other community colleges doing what you're doing, Teresa?
So in the years that I've been doing this, I think there have been 4 times in the 10 years that there has been a community college on HASP. One was on their own. The other 3 had partnered with a university. And then in all our years of doing RockSat X, the only community colleges that we have seen participating is the Colorado Consortium of Community Colleges, where there are multiple community colleges pooling sources and faculty mentors to create one small experiment for the rocket. Now with Rock On, I do meet a lot of people from community colleges because it's entry level. The faculty doesn't have to have any skills. Like I said, there was an English faculty that I met one year. And so I see more community colleges with the Rock On. These are all open to community colleges, but let's see, we probably spent about $12,000 on parts for Roxette X and $5,000 on parts for HASP. We just got back from the May trip. Everything went on my credit card except the rental vehicle. My reimbursement is about $12,000 for travel for May with 4 students and myself and Greg. And then Greg put in his travel reimbursement, which is around $1,200 for the rental vehicle and gas and parking. So things get expensive fast, and I think that that is probably what prohibits people even more than the faculty not knowing how to do the stuff is the funding. And then being willing to volunteer time. You have to have someone who has that volunteer spirit. But yeah, the funding, it's a lot of money. I think our base budget for Roxette X is 80,000, 70 or 80,000, whereas our base for HASP is around 10,000. And that includes all of I try to take at least 4 or 5 students with me to NASA site, if not more. And the amount of funding determines how many people the amount of funding and how many people NASA will let me bring determines how many students go to NASA site.
I have maybe the last question for today, unless others join in, but I would love to hear from each of the students again. What advice would you give to a student who maybe is interested but is worried about doing something new and unexplored?
I think I'll start on that one. I'm very big on going towards something that is completely unknown to me, and I think I forgot. I think maybe Teresa had said this at some point, or anyone else. You can't eat the elephant all at once. You have to take small bites at a time. It's definitely, I think, if anyone has told me what this endeavor was going to be like as a whole, I would too be a little hesitant. But it's definitely it's changed the trajectory of my future. Honestly, I think it's like the best thing for anyone to experience once at least, and it's very. I can't listening to Teresa to hear her in depth everything she's done for us. It's I think we need to appreciate her more, honestly, everyone. But my experience, I think it's learning how to be a team, and I think people who may not have also good social skills is a huge thing. I think as engineers, we're very niche. So it's very, you learn so much from other people and you open up so much. You become a different person from the beginning, I have to admit. And so I think it's, if you entirely from anyone to anyone, give anyone a quick advice would be, if you want to grow, really, it's as easy as it's okay to be scared. It's okay to fear the unknown. It's something new. But it's 1000% worth it. And that'd be my take. Thank you.
I would 100% agree, Vanessa. That's pretty much exactly what I would say. It's just, um, it's 100% worth it just to give it a shot. Obviously, you can't ever be promised, perfect success, that you learned everything, because you'll never learn everything. But what you can be promised is that you gave it a shot and it was worth that shot. No matter the outcome, no matter what happens. Um, and that you're fully capable of, if you are even able to give it a shot, have always been capable of succeeding in whatever way. There's always some way to see success, no matter what happens. So I would 100% say is just give it a shot. Just go for it. Shoot for the stars, as they like to say. Um, you won't regret it. You won't regret it. No matter what, you'll learn something, and that something is going to be valuable. So pretty much, I mean, exactly what Vanessa said is just it's so worth it. It's scary, 100% scary, and it's 100% not easy, but 100% worth it.
Yeah, so if I were to give my take, first of all, I know my cam's been off. Sorry, we're having a meeting here pretty soon, and I live an hour away, so I'm trying to get ready. But mine's a kind of just short and sweet because when I first came into the club, it looked like everyone was like an expert, and that's what kind of scared me the most. I was like, I know nothing, So one thing I always emphasize to new members as president is like nobody knows what we're doing. Like no, we have no idea what we're doing. We're all learning here. Like that dude soldering, he just learned that a couple of hours ago. You know what I'm saying? So it's like yeah, so like I always emphasize it is completely normal to feel overwhelmed when coming into this club. It is completely normal. And we are all learning together and we fail all the time, but that's what's going to make us amazing engineers. So that's just something I always emphasize to new members.
So one of the things I often preface the meeting with is this is not a class. There is no one to tell you what to do. The best thing you can do is start observing, asking questions, and that this is a safe place for everyone. And I often remind my existing members to please, you see some new faces, pull them in, show them what you're doing, because more than anything, I really want them to have a sense of community. I want them to have each other as they're making their way through the STEM pathway, which is hard. And then they're doing these projects on top of it all. And, my students are always really wonderful about bringing in new folks. Even this last month, we've had new people show up and they're like, oh, hey, come check out what we're doing. And, so we create a community where it is safe to fail, where it's like, don't worry about it. This is not your fault. We all worked on this. We got this. How are we going to solve this problem? Let's work on it together. We create a place where it's okay to not know how to do everything. It's okay to have things not work. And Cameron, Vanessa, Brandon, is any of this stuff anything that you think you would that you learned in class or that you think you would ever learn in class when you could transfer?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So what they're doing is not taught in the classes, because what they're doing is they're taking the pen and paper, they're taking the pre-made labs, and they're watching YouTube videos and they're finding out that, oh, wow, that's not how you actually really do things when it's time to build an experiment. You have to worry about this and this and this. And it's learning that only takes place when you start actually doing something. And doing this outside of the classroom. Yeah, and part of the reason, like Vanessa was saying, part of the reason that they were on the lift, adding the thermocouples, is they failed at estimating how much time it was going to take, and they ran out of time when the rocket was horizontal. Well, that ended up, failing to get it done when they were supposed to. Ended up giving them the opportunity to go on the lift and put the thermocouples on later. So sometimes failures can result in really cool opportunities. Well, I just want to say thank you to my students for volunteering even more time, putting a slide here, being here. Thank you to Greg for all the hours you donate, because And I've learned how to machine parts. It's so much fun. Greg has taught us so much over the years. And thank you, each of you who showed up on a Saturday to listen to how I put this together by the seat of my pants, one step at a time. I appreciate everyone being here.